Mum and Dad worked inside Belle Vue, and I went into Belle Vue when I was a baby. My grandparents worked at Belle Vue as well. I must have been about 12 months old when I was in a trolley, and Mum walked round Belle Vue to see everybody, and they took me into the monkey house, and they had a chimp there that rode round on a little bike. I think its name was Charlie, and it came up to me in the pram and grabbed hold of my face, pulled me out of the pram. Everybody panicked, and it just got hold of me, loved me, and then put me back in. Never touched me or anything, you know, never scratched me or anything. And somebody sent for my granddad, and I was all right. And I love chimps anyhow, so that was the first time I was at Belle Vue. Then I used to go when I was about 3 or 4, and Mum had an office on the Scenic Railway, and I kept mithering for her to let me go on it, and she said, no, you're too young, you won't like it. And one of the drivers, Ken Barker, said, let her sit behind me, because the driver was in the middle of the seat, the coaches. He said, she'll be all right. So I did. Went on. When I was getting off, Mum said, well, there you are. You feel sick? I said, no, I'll go again. And I used to spend half my time on the Scenic Railway. So I went on the Elephant, Phil Fernandez. I knew him. But I love going round the animals. But I mostly like going round the fairground. Say I went on every ride on there. The only one I didn't like was the octopus. That was like a big ride. It had arms, and they used to go up and down, and I didn't like that one. So I was told I couldn't go on there, but I sneaked on. And I was 11. When Dad left Belle Vue, he went to work at nowhere, but he worked at weekends at Belle Vue. And he used to work with a chap called Bob. They used to call him Bob Ghosty. And Dad used to help him. And then when I was younger, if I was fed up, I used to say to my mum, can I go and stand with me Dad? Yes. And then anybody that came on their own, I used to say, can I go and sit with them? And they'd ask. And they'd say yes. And when we were going round, I'd say, they're not spiders, you know, it's pieces of string. So I got barred on there.
We was at an interview the other day, and this man said above the ghost train, he said they used to be like little trapdoors. And he said at times they used to do this for a bit of fun. He said they were going round in the ghost train, and they used to lift the trapdoor and then touch people on their heads as they were going past.
Yeah, you used to do all sorts of stuff, things like that. Yeah, when my mum left Belle Vue, again, we used to go in, and there was 3 chaps that she worked with. There was Fred Silver, he was from Margate, Bill Ray, and Jock Crumlish. And my mum would see them. They had their office as well on Scenic, and she used to have a whistle. Now, why she had this whistle, I don't know. She used to just do this whistle like this, and you could see them going round looking for her. And we used to go and see them. But this particular day, there was 3 of us with my mum, and we said, we'll get her on the Caterpillar. I said to her, we'll put my mum nearest in the centre, and then when after the hood's gone over, you know, when it goes back and you stop, he said, yes, I know what you mean. So we all got on, went round, and it stopped. So we got off, and he set the wind blowing. Well, of course, she wore flared skirts then. Well, my mum couldn't get off, because every time she stood up, the wind blew. She did this about 10 minutes. So she got off and she says to him, I'll kill you. And we walked round, then we went to see Uncle Fred and the other two, and they were laughing. She said, "What are you laughing at?" So they said, "Oh, we've had some fun here." He said, "We've been watching a poor woman on that caterpillar. She couldn't get off because her skirts kept blowing up." And she said, "Yes, and that woman was me." But Fred Silver, he had these, where the King's Hall was in front there, he had these little things where he could throw pennies or you get little prizes. He had 2 or 3 of those there. At the end, it was sold, different rides were sold to different companies. But Mum used to say that if they had a good Easter Monday and it was packed, then the money that they took that day would keep the rides, the maintenance of the rides for the rest of the season. And sometimes it used to be 12 o'clock at night and the rides would still be going. They'd have to eventually go round and say that's it, no more rides. They closed down in the winter, yeah. It used to be open every day, but in the winter it'd be just like a weekend because nobody would bother going out then. There was no speedway or anything that burnt down. I went to the new one, the Elizabethan. It's quite nice. It could have been in the old one. I say I didn't go to that one. Yeah, Frankie Lane. I think Johnny Ray was there as well. Never heard that one.
And
there has been quite a few stars there. She feels, I was too young for that one. Yeah, I think he's been there. And who was the other one? Stan, my first husband. He worked at the Hotel Piccadilly, and he got in the lift. There was quite a few people in, and Stan was there, and the lift stopped at the 7th floor, and the voice kept going, excuse me, and nobody bothered, and then they heard it again, and they moved, and it was Andy Williams, and he stuck at the back of everybody else, and that, yeah. That wall of death used to be going round like this, you had to be going round. I was young. I used to go to the Speedway. It was Jack Parker and Louis Lawson. There was a crowd of us, the girls went, and we used to meet up the same crowd. We used to stand at the front at the beginning, but we went home dirty, so we went in the seats. And then I stopped going. And when Jane and Sheila got older, we went to stock cars, and we saw a bad accident. So I said, we're not going again. So they said, how about Speedway? And I thought, we'll have to stock cars, and there's only 4 riders going round. So we went, and they got really hooked up on this. Jane, the eldest girl, she was a secretary for Dave Allen, one of the riders, and Kenny McKinnon from Scotland. He came, his wife, and we got very friendly with them. He was one of the groomsmen at Jane's wedding. Peter Craven was when I was younger. I didn't go then. Used to go out, and then underneath the Scenic Railway was a little tunnel, and it was opened, and you could go into Belle Vue then. You didn't have to pay for that. Say, I only ever paid to go in, I think it was £0.50 to go in. Now it's about £16, but there was always, that animal smell, in a zoo. But I love the elephants. I even went in the reptile house and when we school, held the snakes. And I say that chimp. People thought I wouldn't like chimps, but I do. Just going around Belle Vue, when I was little, I used to say I'd sit in the office with my mum, and then I'd go and she'd get one of the ticket girls to take me to my dad, and they used to have a little kiddies section, and they had it was like a Scenic Railway, but it was a little one that went up and down, the mini coaster, and they had little Dobby horses, and that was a lady called Maggie Britton. I used to go and sit with her a lot. And then I used to like, when I got older, going on the rides, you know, with my friends.
And
as you went in, they were on the left-hand side, all the top managers' offices. Mum worked there at first, in there. Chris Wiseman did a lot of planning the Monkey Mountain, and he was building a Wendy house. I don't know what for, and that's how my mum became Wendy, because he used to forget people's names, and in the end he said to me mum, he'd shout Wendy, and she'd say, my name's not Wendy, and he said, well, it is now, and that's how she came as Wendy Warburton. The Railway Queen, they had that on the speedway. Went to a few of those, and they had these Morris dancers, and they had they came from all over, and they had the competition, and they had the same tune, so wherever you went you got the tune, and it was dead boring, and you see these girls with these Morris things. They had a train down the Longsight entrance that Tommy White was the driver on there, or one of the drivers, the main driver. There is a railway at Rill, at the back near where the Blue Bridge is, and it's supposed to be one of the trains there as well.
Right.
Yeah,
that was the one that
moved it over, yeah.
But I don't think it's there anymore, that little railway, because it's all been altered in Rill round there.
Yes, cool.
Well, the fun fair's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's over the falls was that was another good one. Next door to where the Scenic Railway was, and you went in, and it was like a little dark passage, and then you walked along, and there was like a moving floor, and you tried to get over this floor, and then when you got up into this room, they opened the doors, and there was a seat. A wooden seat, and you think, oh, this is weird. And when you sat down and they closed the door again, the seat just went, it's two wooden rollers, and the other doors opened, and you went, and it was like over the falls. Well, you ended up all over the show, and that was good, that. And you'd have loads of people, when they'd been on it, they'd stand at the bottom, you know, and you'd be here, there and everywhere. It was great. No, but I've met Matt Kelly, that was one of the head keepers there. No, I just went round and had a look, and yes, I didn't like circuses, because I didn't like the animals. I've got this thing with animals, and it like the lion tamer, you know, how marvellous he was, yeah. And no, it was cruel.